Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim, and Chris. On today's Indian Wells catch-up,
Djokovic succumbs to another lucky loser,
Kyrgios retirement rumours spread in tearful exit.
and Swiatek stays on track for a historic three-peat.
Chris, today is the 11th of March, and we are here to catch up on the week in tennis at Tennis Weekly HQ. We're halfway through Indian Wells as we head into round 4. So join us as we look back on all the men's and women's action so far. We're going to be chatting as well about court speeds, and we're going to be looking at just what it is about lucky losers that have Novak Djokovic's number at the moment. Elsewhere, we will be discussing the WTA's new maternity policy, in part thanks to the Saudi Arabia-backed public investment fund. Yeah, very, very interesting there. And there's the usual predictions, a mysterious player to boot in the second half. But Chris, we're here. It's a Tuesday. We're recording slightly later than usual, and we're gearing up for the second week in Palm Springs.
We are indeed. Tennis paradise is in full swing. We haven't seen too many upsets on the women's side, but the men's side is definitely keeping us guessing, really, isn't it?
It has. And actually, it's been in London. I don't know about in Denmark, but in London, it's actually felt like a paradise spring this weekend. It was lovely weather.
Wow, so maybe you feel like you don't need to make the trip across the pond, Joel.
I don't. But however, I did have some regret where I actually went to the outdoor Lido that is near me in London, and I thought, the weather's nice. I'm actually going to use this opportunity to dip in to an outdoor pool. I had instant regret. It actually brought me back to winter. The water was not warm.
Yeah, that's probably not the wisest. Winter bathing's a big thing here. I'm not sure quite so much in London. So maybe that's one to skip if you want to keep yourself warm and the vibe sunny.
Yes, but it's been very, very nice weather out in Palm Springs, and we're going to be getting into the tennis in a sec. But before we do, you may have noticed that we have a new sponsor at Tennis Weekly HQ, and that is the Sports, Travel and Hospitality Group. So we just want to give them a massive shout out. Thank you for coming on board as part of the Tennis Weekly family. And it's a great company, great at what they do, because they take fans to the heart of the action of sporting events around the world, including Roland-Garros. And they've got some really nice packages when it comes to hospitality at Roland-Garros. And it's just got me thinking, Chris, because, I have done hospitality at Wimbledon, and, I have done the career slam, the career fan slam. I've been to all the events, Wimbledon, French Open, Australian Open, US Open. I have not done, though, the hospitality career fan slam. So I feel like that could be in the offing.
Wow. I mean, I'm not sure that's necessarily something that people track. You could do
Have any of our listeners done that? Let us know.
Do let us know. Well, there's a chance for you to do it with Sports, Travel and Hospitality Group. And you could maybe even do the calendar Grand Slam of hospitality. That could also be something you could go for, Joel, if you do manage to complete that full set. But no, it's a particularly interesting offering this year as well, because anyone who is looking for French Open tickets will know that it's changed to a ballot system this year. So you can only get 4 tickets to the show courts across the entire 2 weeks, which previously was not the case. The cap was very different. You could get up to 9. So it's harder to get into the show court. So if you want to secure your spot at Roland-Garros and a premium seat on Philippe Chatrier, this could be one of the best ways for you to be able to secure that. So do check it out. The link will be in the description. And they have many packages available. So do make sure that you look to see if there is something that suits you.
And Chris, it's funny you brought up Roland-Garros, because it's been also in the news this week. Now, I didn't actually realize this. I didn't actually realize Philippe Chatrier gets used for lots of different sort of occasions throughout the year. I just assumed like Wimbledon, it's just like, we'll just use this court for 3 weeks of the year. But no, Philippe Chatrier is being used at the moment. And it concerns someone who actually is in Tennis Weekly, is a big talking point at Tennis Weekly at the moment.
It does indeed. So maybe the mystery's been solved as to what these overseas engagements were that Venus Williams had when she was asked about why she wasn't accepting the Indian Wells wildcard, because she's actually been on not necessarily the tennis court we were expecting at Stadium 1 in Tennis Paradise. She was on Philippe Chatrier for the Lacoste Fall Ready to Wear Fashion Week event as part of Paris Fashion Week. So she was there. She was rocking quite a sporty looking sort of crocodile-esque heel, which is, I mean, quite unusual, but she looked fashionable as ever. She is a big fashionista. But I mean, it is quite strange after thinking we were going to be seeing her on one tennis court. We saw another one, but in a very different capacity.
I'm just looking at these shoes. They are going to leave a big imprint into the dirt on Chatrier.
She might get stuck. Hope she doesn't trip over.
Yeah, like if the clay is soft, like I'm just sort of seeing like the shoe, the what is it? Is it the stiletto or like the
stiletto heel? Yes, indeed.
Yeah, it's just getting like stuck in the ground.
It does look like there's a little bit of extra grip there, so maybe that will help her. But either way, a very cool look and great to see Venus on a tennis court.
Yes, we've got to the conclusions now. She didn't pick the Indian Wells wild card because she had prior engagements at Paris Fashion Week. There you go. Another Tennis Weekly scoop. Do you know what? I actually was quite interested in something that happened on the tennis court this week in Indian Wells, and it was concerning Carlos Alcaraz because I don't know if you saw this or if any of our listeners saw this. There were a group of fans dressed up as bees in the crowd for Carlos Alcaraz's match, for one of his matches, and this is apparently a callback to last year where bees basically swarmed onto the tennis court in his match between himself and Zverev. And so, yeah, the fans, I mean, it's a deep cut, but he absolutely loved it.
I mean, he did. It was pretty iconic. I feel like, Joel, this one's right up your street because it reminds me of some of the costumes you've worn to the darts in previous years. I feel like it's the same vibe, but there must be some pretty hardcore tennis fans there because that is relatively niche. I think maybe if you went there last year and were at that match and there was suspended play because of bee activity. I think it was on Spidercam as well, the camera that goes across the court.
Of course, yes.
And then
I've never seen anything like it.
Very strange when it comes to delays, but he saw the funny side. They were very vocally cheering him on. So that was definitely nice for him. And maybe it'll make him feel a bit like he's got a little bit of a Carlos Alcaraz army that could rival the Carota boys because it's pretty fun to see human adult men dressed as bumblebees.
I do think that when you dress up, someone is in, and it's a group of you. I think a conversation that always comes in is, what's the easiest way to get on television? And dressing up, I just think is one of the easiest ways to do that. It's how I got onto TV in a chicken outfit at the darts. So yeah, maybe there's a little bit of that there, but yeah, he did say it did motivate him. He did enjoy it, seeing it in the first set. So he did really enjoy it, and we'll have to see if it goes further than Indian Wells or if it's just going to stay at the tournament. Because yeah, who knows? Jannik Sinner has the Carota boys. Is there another faction brewing?
What should they be called? Please write in and tell us. That's a hard one. I'm not even going to try and do that one now.
Well, just lastly on this, I saw one of the fans lift up a yellow piece of paper that said Carlitos equals Stinger in caps lock. So I don't know if that could be the start of something for a name.
The Alcabuzz. I don't know, something like that, as opposed to
Carl Beatos.
There
we go.
Yes, there we go. That's better. We'll take that.
Kim is probably just sort of shaking her head as she probably
descends into chaos when she's not here.
Into chaos.
This episode is brought to you by Sports, Travel and Hospitality Group,
the leading provider of travel, hospitality and customer experiences at global sporting events, including this year's Roland-Garros.
By booking with Sports, Travel and Hospitality Group, tennis fans around the world can witness the pinnacle of the clay court season unfold, all the while indulging in luxurious hospitality that only Roland-Garros can provide.
As an official agent of Roland-Garros, Sports, Travel and Hospitality Group guarantees you unrivaled views from the best seats in the house on Philippe Chatrier, as well as world-class cuisine and beverages served on site.
With Sports, Travel and Hospitality Group, you also have access to the matches of your choosing with 3 package tiers available across the entire tournament.
Learn more and book your Roland-Garros hospitality package today at sportstravelhospitality.com/Roland-Garros. That's sportstravelhospitality.com/Roland-Garros.
So what are you waiting for? Secure your premium seat at Roland-Garros today. for a once-in-a-lifetime Grand Slam tennis experience.
The link is in the description. We're going to catch up on the ATP side of things at Indian Wells because we are now at the round 4 stage. And we've had a few upsets along the way. A lot more upsets, it has to be said, in the men's draw as opposed to the women's draw. And one of the biggest kind of upsets. Well, actually, before we get into that, we didn't actually announce our predictions in our last episode. And what are we thinking? I'm just kind of looking. I mean, the fact that obviously Zverev is out, Djokovic is out, Rublev is out, Casper Ruud is out. It's sort of made a mockery, I feel, a little bit of my predictions.
I mean, I think for the final, you're still looking pretty good. If I was one of us, I think I'd be more concerned if I was Kim with these being announced. And maybe that's why she's not here this week. Because she did have Zverev making the final. I had him going out in first round. I think you did as well, Joel. So we didn't do too badly. You're backing the Americans, I believe.
Yes, I do have Tommy Paul in my final versus Alcaraz. So there is a little bit of cause for comfort there because I think Tommy Paul's been playing quite well this week.
He has been playing well. I have also gone for the same winner as Kim with Alcaraz. And thankfully, all of our winners are still in at this point. So if we recorded tomorrow, I'm sure it would be a very different situation. But for right now, we can do a mini pat on the back for our efforts so far.
Mini pat on the back, indeed. Although I've just realised I put Tommy Paul as champion, defeating Carlos Alcaraz in the final. I'm not quite sure.
Was that a typo?
I'm not quite sure if that's going to fly, but let's wait and see. But let's talk about a few of the shocks that have happened so far because there has been an abundance of them, and I think one of the biggest ones has been Novak Djokovic. Novak Djokovic lost to Botic van der Zandschulp 6-2, 3-6, 6-1. Now, this is the second consecutive year he has lost to a lucky loser in Indian Wells. He was defeated by Luca Nardi last time out in California. And now, BVZ has defeated him. BVZ. I mean, we're gonna talk about him in a little bit more in a bit because he's got some claims to fame over the last 6 months or so with big upsets. But just talking about Novak Djokovic first, I mean, Chris, what did you make of his performance and the fact that, he went down in 3 sets, coupled with the fact that, he had that Berrettini loss as well. I think he's on a 3-match losing streak at the moment. I know I'm sort of dramatizing things and actually that's maybe no kind of real cause for concern. But when you're talking about this in terms of Novak Djokovic, lucky losers as well, it's not a good sign, is it?
It's not the best of signs, but having said that, he did obviously lose to a lucky loser and then go on and win Olympic gold. So it doesn't mean he can't necessarily reach another Grand Slam final. He did that last year following a run of pretty poor form as well. Didn't start the year well last year. Hasn't really started the year that well this year, even though he's played a little bit more, a few more tournaments along the way. It is just a bit surprising because he's got this Murray partnership that they're quite fond of, but it doesn't necessarily look like it's translating to results necessarily. I know that this is the first week they're back united together. For the Sunshine Swing. He will be playing Miami, which he pulled out of last year. So there's a chance when you have the Sunshine Double, it's rare that people do well at both. So that might be something that might kind of lift spirits. In a couple of weeks, we'll be talking about him lifting the trophy. Who knows? But from a performance perspective, he did not look particularly happy or particularly motivated out there. And the numbers were not great. I mean, we talk about how good a returner he is. It's not the quickest courts in the world. And that's something that many players have been talking about. But on return, I mean, Djokovic was pretty weak. He only won, I think it was off the second serve. Botic van der Zandschulp actually won 85% of second serve points won, whereas Novak Djokovic won 33. Wow. So not returning that well and not serving that well. And I mean, for Djokovic, the return is his bread and butter when it comes to his tennis. So when that's not working, it does make you think, hang on a minute, something's not right. Having said that, it's probably not his favorite conditions. And I think he was quite vocal on that.
Yeah, I mean, 16 winners to 37 unforced errors in total. He did speak about,
isn't it, Joel?
It's not great. It's not great. And I think particularly we're going to get onto it now. I mean, talking about the court surface, I mean, I think it's been quite funny in the fact that going into the tournament, we were talking about it being a faster...
Quickest year ever.
Yeah, quickest year ever, potentially faster surface. And actually, the players have said, the complete opposite. I mean, Medvedev said it's the slowest court he's ever played on. And, Djokovic didn't necessarily go that far. But do you feel like the court also had a hand in the manner of the defeat for Djokovic?
I mean, he hasn't, if he'd not been practicing on centre court, he did raise that point that it's bouncing a lot higher on centre court than some of the outside courts. He said higher than some of the highest clay courts,
Wow.
Which he said he found very difficult to play against. So maybe the kicker serves are doing particularly well here. Maybe that's why his return wasn't as good on the second serve from Botic's delivery. It's hard to really know, but he was not finding his rhythm. He was very transparent about that afterwards. I think in terms of the speed of the court, maybe a quicker court surface hasn't actually led to better quality play, because unforced errors were always a problem here. But we're seeing unforced error numbers that are so high from some of these matches from players who aren't normally hitting that many unforced errors. The same was true for Casper. I think he was well into the 50s in terms of unforced errors when he crashed out. So it does make you think that it might be tennis paradise, but it might not be a tennis player's paradise.
No, and I sort of think with Djokovic, he's lost some of that pace. I think that was there like a few years ago that ultimately led him to be a five-time champion in Indian Wells, and I think he finds it maybe a little bit more difficult now to generate that pace. And when you're on a slow court as slow as this, it's almost like an essential tool to have, but he's not quite finding it. So I wonder if that was a kind of a contributing factor as well. But just talking about Botic van der Zandschulp, I mean, he has had quite a run over the last 6 months, because he's defeated last man to defeat Novak Djokovic, last man to defeat Rafael Nadal, and he defeated also Carlos Alcaraz at the US Open. So as much as this was a bad day at the office, I guess, for Novak Djokovic, Botic van der Zandschulp does have credentials when it comes to massive shocks.
He really does. I mean, he just never played Federer. Otherwise, I mean, he really would be completing the set there when it comes to the goats of the game. I feel like from when we've seen him play previously, he does like a big match, a big matchup. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to win the matches on the tour when there isn't all that focus there. It's almost like when there's a point to prove, he brings his A game. And the rest of the time, he's quite happily quite a mid player a lot of the time. So, I mean, for his career, he's definitely got some highlights, but he wouldn't want to be winning these matches from 85 in the world. I think he'd want to be right up there in the top 50. I mean, he should be a top 30 player, really, if he could play more consistently on the tour throughout the year. But take nothing away from the fact that he's got some fantastic wins, and he definitely is a name that in the last 6 months, as you say, a lot of people will be taking note of.
Yeah. He's carved a little bit of history, I feel, on the tour with
Giant
some of his
killer
performances. Exactly. I mean, it's I think with Indian Wells, it's been particularly baffling because in the qualifying, he actually got bageled by a player outside the top 200 in the final round of qualifiers. So it just shows how different.
That's not a great look, is it, for Djokovic, having said that? No.
No. And I guess, before we move on, I mean, the final question I was going to ask is, does this make you think with Novak Djokovic coming back to Grand Slams, can he still win Grand Slam titles?
I think he can. I think he can definitely put himself in contention. I'm really at a bit of a loss unless it's motivation that is missing for him, because the game shouldn't be. Obviously, age catches up to you, but I'm not sure why it would have happened in the way that it's happened to him, given the fact that he has been so good at managing his body over the years. It does just feel like there's something a little bit lost in the focus side of things. So I'm still with what he did last year and what Billie Jean King believes he should do. Pick the one you want to win, put everything into trying to win that. And whether that is another Wimbledon title, whether that's Roland-Garros or the US Open, but put yourself in the best situations, try and win one more as opposed to be a top player. And I think he is thinking like that. But I do think it is harder to motivate yourself when everything you've ever wanted to achieve, you have achieved. And we did talk about this post the Olympics. What will happen? How will his game change? Because it is a very different scenario to be in where you're no longer chasing anything.
Well, age may be catching up with Novak Djokovic, but sadly for Nick Kyrgios, a reoccurring injury caught up with him because he suffered a wrist injury in his match against Botic van der Zandschulp. He retired 7-6, 3-love down. He was visibly upset when he was speaking to the trainer. I think he was very aware that this was about his right wrist, which he had surgery on back in 2023. yeah, Chris, this was not a nice kind of viewing experience to watch. See a player like, Nick kind of unravel on the tennis court and leave us so, I guess, uncertain, in relation to, his future. What was your kind of take on the Nick Kyrgios kind of retirement, the injury, the fact that it's a recurring injury? Where's your head at with regards to this? Because a lot of people are kind of talking about this in the realms of like, it's great that he's tried to make a comeback, but it's gonna be very tough going.
I think he needs to think about what he really wants and what the reality is, because before he even stepped onto court, I don't think many people thought he would complete this match, because he'd already spoken about the fact that wrist injuries had not gone away. They had not improved despite the fact that he had taken some time off the tour, having returned in Australia. So maybe he tried to come back a bit sooner in Australia, but it seems like it's done more damage than good. It doesn't look like he's able to be competitive across multiple sets in the way that he previously was able to. And I think you have to really think, and maybe those tears were him realizing that maybe it's actually not going to be possible for him to compete again at the highest level consistently. So tough scenes to watch. You don't want to see anyone kind of as devastated like that in front of like so many people. Again, we're not Kyrgios sympathizers. We are someone who wants to see people get back to the form they once showed. And I'm not sure that that's something that is realistic for him now. And I'm not sure he's someone who's always put in the rehab work or the work required or the discipline. It's not an Andy Murray who can rehab a hip injury. I think wrist injuries are different and they do require an awful lot of discipline and patience. And I'm not sure that he necessarily has that. Or the desire is also.
Yeah, I mean, the wrist injury he suffered, I think there's kind of talk out there saying that no one's ever come back from that sort of injury. But I think if you look at, I think about kind of the Dominic Thiem situation when he came back from what I think actually was a less severe wrist injury, but still had a massive impact, on his career
And his mentality.
Yeah, and his mentality and his confidence. And you think about, the Kyrgios game with his forehand and his big serve. And, it sort of requires and demands, getting that extra pop puts a lot of strain on that wrist. And I think it just shows how, almost like wrist injuries are like the worst type of injuries tennis players can get, because, looking at kind of the Dominic Thiem situation, it is like you're never scarily, like you might never come back as the same tennis player ever again.
And I think that was also the same with like Laura Robson. I think it really is something that can be completely career ending from a day in, day out perspective. And maybe that is true, that maybe there is this, let's give it a last chance. Let's give it a go, see what I can do. And the realization that it might not work out, I think is probably pretty devastating.
And I mean, it was not a great time to be Nick Kyrgios in Indian Wells. And it was also not a great time to be the top seed, Alexander Zverev. He is not having a great time of it lately post Australian Open. He is 4-4, lost to Talon Griekspoor, who closed out a really tight match, it must be said, 4-6, 7-6, 7-6. Had quite a few match points Griekspoor did, eventually getting it over the line. But yes, Zverev, Chris, we've spoken about him before, went to the Golden Swing, didn't quite work out there, came back onto the hard courts, did sort of okay, I guess, in Acapulco. But Indian Wells, world number one sort of ranking, kind of there in sort of, not even in hidden sight, in plain sight with the Jannik Sinner suspension. Not making the most of the opportunity. What is going on with Alexander Zverev at the moment?
Well, it does feel like the pressure of the situation may be getting to him. I think being the number one seed, being slamless, going for number one, I do think that there's a lot of things in his career that have worked out in the way he'd have liked, but the big things maybe haven't. And the pressure seems to be something that really he's never been good at coping with. He's not necessarily great in those big moments in slam finals, semi-finals. And so it does just make me think that now that there is this sort of opportunity with Sinner away, it's almost as though he's not able to take it because of some of that pressure. But also, would he want the number one ranking? being slamless, that's also a question mark you have to ask. I'm sure that most people would, but it is a bit of a strange one, pursuing something that you might be able to get because someone is banned, so cannot play. It's also a very odd one in that respect. It doesn't feel like it would be, the slamless number one who became number one when the number one was banned.
I mean, it would just add another unwanted tag to your name,
a caveat. Yeah, I'm not sure. So I think maybe it's just a very strange time to be competing. It does feel like there is distraction there. I'm not really sure what's going on because we saw him play so well in Australia to get to the final, and then suddenly his form is completely gone. And he's been top seed in so many of these tournaments he's played, almost all of them, and he hasn't lived up to that ranking at all. So very shocking. I think the Greek sport loss is not as surprising as you might think because there has been quite some good form from Greek sport that he's shown recently.
Yeah, I agree.
I had that on upset alert. It was pretty nightmarish from a first round here, a first match here for him. But I mean, in terms of where he goes from here, I mean, obviously there is now Miami. There's always a chance to turn things around on the Sunshine Swing. But he has got those points to defend from winning Rome last year. So it does look like the door has closed on his potential chance of reaching the world number one during this period. And maybe Carlos Alcaraz might be the only person who could do it realistically.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the kind of the top of the rankings, no one is in terms of the race, and no one really is
within 3,000 points.
Great form at the moment. Yeah, I mean, apart from maybe Carlos Alcaraz, even Taylor Fritz, I know he's still in, but he struggled through against Alejandro Tabilo. Like, should be closing that out, I feel, a little bit more convincingly. I mean, just on Zverev, do you think he regrets playing the Golden Swing in hindsight, and whether he should have maybe stuck to the hard, the faster indoor hard courts of like a Rotterdam, for example?
I mean, the reason you go is because you're paid. So it was a financial decision, I imagine, and probably he is at his most appealing financially as the number two in the world. So they wanted to secure him. They always try and secure a top five player for the Golden Swing. He's the one who said yes. So when it comes to what you're looking for, whether you're looking to make money or whether you're looking to, win titles, it does feel like a lot of people went to the Golden Swing this year with a bit of a half-hearted approach, and it was more because they had appearance fees, because a lot of them didn't stick around or they withdrew or didn't take it as seriously as you might think that they should. Because there are points on the line if you play in those two tournaments. But switching to clay at this point is not something he's done previously, and it's hard to do with success. So then go back to Acapulco, get food poisoning, end up in Indian Wells. It's all a bit messy, isn't it? So if you look back, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Probably wasn't worth it.
And what do you think Jannik Sinner is making of this? Because at the moment, I'm almost like, this is a race of one. This is a race of one. Not really anyone, apart from Carlos Alcaraz, is sort of in, I'd say, good nick at the moment, in good form. Yeah. What do you think Jannik Sinner's making of this from, the fashion shows and the ski slopes of Italy?
I think he's probably thinking, maybe I structure my season to make it shorter and take more holidays because I can turn up for the slams, win them, take a break, and I'll still be number one. So I think keeping the number one ranking is something that he would probably quite like to do during this period. I think keeping an unbroken number one ranking is a record that people look at, like how many consecutive weeks at the top. So every week that goes by, every week where the different challengers are scuppering their opportunities, I think is a week where, maybe he'll raise a glass on the slopes at the après-ski.
Yeah, and I do wonder once he does come back, whether that will take the pressure back off Zverev, and it almost
becomes
will have
the chaser.
Yeah, like it'll change the dynamic, I think, completely, because there will actually be like someone there to maybe motivate you to, as you say, as the challenger, as the kind of the threat. Because at the moment it's like there's an empty, as I say, it's like an empty void at the top, and it's playing funny things.
I think we're missing him as well in some ways. I'm not saying that I don't think he should be banned, because I've been consistent on that throughout, but there is a void that is left. Yeah. There really is, especially when the top players aren't winning as much. And I think that's why a lot more people might be rooting for Alcaraz to go deep here, because he's good for the tournament. He's good for people watching. Lots of people come to see him. He's keeping the bees happy, the bee population of Indian Wells. But he's also playing some really great tennis. And I think that's something that people want to see. And when the best player in the world isn't playing, I think it does definitely put the strain on the rest of the field to deliver from an entertainment perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if you look at the set of matches we have in round 4. I mean, the top half without without Zverev, it feels quite open. I know we still have Medvedev in there. Tsitsipas is still playing very, very well at the moment. Very intriguing matchup he has, actually, I think, against Holger Rune, who came through a tight tussle with Ugo Humbert. But yeah, it feels like there's a lot of opportunity in that top half. And I just love this story because we also have Yosuke Watanuki qualifier into the 4th round. He's the lowest ranked player into the 4th round since Tommy Haas back, the tournament organizer. So yeah, to see him going on a protected ranking into qualifying to come through all the way to round 4, it does show that there is opportunities to be had here.
There definitely are, and I think we've seen upsets. I think not every player likes the conditions here, and
no,
you might be able to be a lucky loser and win some rounds. I think we'll see that on the women's side as well, with Sonay Kartal doing a great job. A lot of players aren't that comfortable in these conditions, so there are opportunities for these sorts of results. It's a bit like, grass court. It's quite unique. Not everyone enjoys it. You do get those opportunities.
And I don't think you need to be ultra aggressive. You just need to be able to stay in the point. I mean, Alex de Minaur is playing fantastic. We've spoken before about Jack Draper. He's just so good at keeping himself in the rally. And Daniil Medvedev as well. I know he was angry about kind of, this is the slowest court ever, I cannot believe it. But I actually think that suits him, from the back of the court as well. So, we'll have to see how they progress. One last thing before we go on to the WTA side of things, just on Carlos Alcaraz. Now, I think this is a publicity stunt, but please tell me if I'm wrong. He's got a new tattoo. And he always normally gets a tattoo when he's won a Grand Slam. He was desperate to get, I think it was a kangaroo tattoo if he won the Australian Open. So he's got a new tattoo. Was it for his date? Is it like a date?
The release date of his Netflix documentary. So it's been a year in the making. I believe it started being made potentially at Indian Wells last year when he came away with the title. It's called Carlos Alcaraz My Way. I'm hoping the tattoo is not permanent because, I mean, what if the numbers aren't great and it gets cancelled after Series 1? It could only be one series, we don't know, but there'll be plenty of things that will be covered on it. And I do think it's kind of like in the Taylor Swift sort of Easter egg school of thought. Like, a lot of people were thinking, what is this tattoo? And then quite quickly people realized it would have been the Netflix launch. So keep your calendars, keep your eyes peeled for the release. Is it a rub-on
tattoo? Is it an actual tattoo?
I really hope it's a temporary transfer. We will keep you updated, listeners.
Yeah, I mean, in the bottom half, it feels like it is Carlos Alcaraz's to lose. He's got Dimitrov next, who's just come through a 3-hour tussle with Monfils. Jack Draper's in there, Taylor Fritz. Ben Shelton, I think, has been looking quite good this tournament as well. So yeah, we'll have to see how that progresses. But let's move on to talk about the women. And this has sort of actually gone to the seedings because Sabalenka is still in there, Coco Gauff's still in there, Iga Swiatek's still in there, Aryna Rybakina is still in there. All the top seeds are basically are in there. We've got Madison Keys as well, the Australian Open champion. Let's talk about Iga Swiatek first because she is a 2-time champion here. Her win-loss record is 18-1. And yet her last title on the tour, I believe, was the French Open last year.
That's true, yeah.
Do you think that of kind of the favourites or the big names, do you feel like Iga Swiatek has the most on the line or the most to gain from this tournament, given the drought that she has had?
I think she's got to be a lot more aware of that than we were. It doesn't feel like she hasn't won in such a long time. And bear in mind, she was match point down at Roland-Garros, so that almost didn't happen. So it does feel like maybe it's going a bit under the surface, or people aren't really realizing this is the case, that the dominance is still there because she is winning matches, 6-love, 6-2, lots of bagels, lots of breadsticks being handed out. So it does make me think that potentially there's a problem because she's able to defeat the players, top 30 players, dispatch them easily, and then you get into these sort of tricky encounters that she seems to lose. So for her, the conditions being the way that they are, people are saying it plays like a clay court.
I don't.
Right?
Are we in Paris? Is this Paris Springs?
Well, Venus is in Paris, so maybe she would win that tournament. But I think it's got to be playing to her favour in terms of the time she'll have on the ball, how much harder it is to get the ball through the court, and also like the high bounce is something that she really quite likes. So it does favour those who stay in the rally, low unforced errors, or those that really thump the ball a bit like a clay court. You can hit through it if you would like to, and Iga does need a title because it's been a while. It's been a while since she's had such a long period. I think since she won her first title, it's the longest period she's gone without a title. So that is of note.
Definitely. And very intriguing matchup against Mukova. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that in the second half. But just talking about the Americans, I mean, Jessie Pegula is still in there, but a lot of talk in the build-up was on Madison Keys because this is her first tournament since becoming Australian Open champion. She had a very good win against the durable, ever-present sort of round 3 competitor, Elise Mertens. Had a slight wobble in that second set. I think she was a set and 3-love up, but eventually came through 6-4 in the third. What have you made of Madison Keys so far in this tournament with this new title as Grand Slam champion bestowed upon her?
I've been very impressed. I think it would be quite easy to go out early. I think she said she had a bit of an existential crisis having won the slam. So having the time off, I think, made a lot of sense. It's very smart. I think Raducanu should have done that when she won her first slam. I don't think she should have played the rest of the year. I think she should have built up to the next season. I think it is definitely a good way of looking at it is the next time you play, some of that pressure is off. You're at home. It's a big tournament. It feels like the way that big players should manage their schedule. And she's got the wins. I think Mertens, she was up playing very well, but she's actually never beaten Mertens. She's lost to her twice before, never got a win. So actually getting the win is quite good for her because it would not be great. You know, you don't want a 3-0 record, but at the same time, turning around a head-to-head is actually something that's quite commendable. So I think she looked good, a bit patchy at times, but Mertens, I mean, she's that sort of player that will make you keep hitting balls. And if you do start missing, it can go a bit awry like it did in that second set.
Yeah, she's a tricky customer, especially on this sort of surface, definitely. I mean, one other player who did crash out early, Naomi Osaka, lost to Camila Osorio 6-4, 6-4. Now, Chris, she went on social media afterwards and she said, worst match I've ever played in my life. Wow, I'm so sorry to everyone who watched that. Not pretty from Osaka out in California.
Also, probably if you're Osorio, you're not like, this is a huge compliment to me.
Yeah, I was like, oh, thanks.
But I don't think she's trying to take anything away from her opponent. I think genuinely when you do hit over 50 unforced errors in a straight sets match and you need, 24 points to win a set or something like that, it just feels like you gave that match away. And it was as bad as it could get. And unfortunately for Osaka, she said this is a blip. It doesn't have to be like it's a bump in the road, but this is it's a pretty sizable bump. It's almost like you've gone over and like you've bumped into the surface, the pavement, and then kept going. It just feels like it's like a huge bump as opposed to something else. So I just think we never know what's going to happen with Naomi. I really hope it comes together, but this is not a good sign.
No, and I mean it's so competitive as well. I mean, you look at the players left. It is a really full. It doesn't feel like there are any gaps here. I mean, we've got Paulini, Vekic, Belinda Bencic, following up that that very good run she had in Australia. Mukova, Svitolina. Yeah, it's almost a who's who crowd in round 4. One player I just want to call out before we go to a break: Sonay Kartal, GB's Sonay Kartal. She's come in here, reached round 4. This is an incredible result already for her. Had a very good win against Haddad Meyer, the 16th seed. Followed that up against Kudermetova, Polina Kudermetova, I should say, in round 3. And has almost kind of this like free bonus shot, I think, against the top seed, Aryna Sabalenka. But Chris, this is an incredible story because I don't think we were expecting this from Kartal on the WTA Tour in this sort of tournament. Even though she's been playing well on the ITF circuit a little further down.
Well, I mean, she checked out of her hotel because she'd lost in qualifying. So she thought, it's game over for me. And then thankfully, because of one of my favourites, Sloane Stephens, pulling out, she's had a little operation, I think, on her foot from an injury. Sonay Kartal was gifted this opportunity. So I think she's playing for Sloane now. She's embodied, peak Sloane Stephens, but she's playing so well and making the most of an opportunity, I think you can definitely say. And although she may not win her next round, I think the point she's got to go really pushing towards top 50 now in the world, that will really help her when it comes to tournaments all over the world qualifying.
Yeah, definitely. She should be getting direct entry a lot more into those WTA Tour events. So we'll see if she, as I say, kind of sticks maybe to the ITFs or kind of actually balances it out a little bit more, because I think we've seen this week she's got the game, certainly, I think, to kind of be competitive on the tour. So really, really exciting to see. We're going to take a quick break now, but do join us in the second half where we will be discussing the WTA's new maternity cover seat. Oh, I got that right. I got so excited. I got my words mixed up there. The WTA's new maternity cover policy, and we're also going to look ahead to the action as the second week of Indian Wells gets underway. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, brought to you by Sports Travel and Hospitality Group, and it's time, as always, Chris, to start off with another game at the start of this second half. And before we recorded, listeners, I always sort of ask, like, what type of game have we got? And actually, Chris, you've kept it under wraps from me.
I have. I kind of teased a mysterious player. I changed my mind on that. I've gone more traditional. You probably can sort of guess what it is. So I hope you haven't done any homework here. But we're talking about the last 10 winners of Indian Wells from a men's perspective.
Ooh.
That goes all the way back to 2003. And I'm going to set you a par, because you've been setting me quite a few pars recently, Joel. I'm going to set par at, I'm going to go for 6 will be par.
Oh, okay.
I think that's doable. And for listeners who don't know, Joel has to name 6 or more in order to win this quiz today. So, Joel, you may not have the best track record at this normally.
Yeah, I'm nervous on these.
You cannot count 2020.
I was
not
putting
held.
all my focus on a mysterious player, and then you throw this curveball. And yes, right, okay. I'm going to start up. I, as always, got to start obvious and go Novak Djokovic.
An easy answer.
Surely Roger Federer.
Roger Federer has indeed won it many times. He's won it 5 times since 2003.
Okay. Has Andy Murray won Indian Wells? I think he has. I'm hoping so. I'm going to say Andy Murray.
I'm going to have to tell you, Joel.
Is it? Am I wrong already?
Andy Murray hasn't done it.
Oh, no.
Unfortunately, he made a final in 2009 against Nadal. He lost 6-1, 6-2. So that wasn't the best par. I thought maybe you'd have gone for, Nadal. Thought that'd be quite a good one. Last year's champion. The champion before that as well was also Carlos Alcaraz, won it the last 2 years.
Yes.
Cam Norrie.
Oh, man.
Local favourite, Taylor Fritz.
Okay.
But all of those names you could have had, you need to give me another one to redeem yourself that I have not mentioned.
I don't know. Daniel Medvedev.
Medvedev again. He's made the last 2 finals.
Dimitrov.
We're not going to get it, are we, Joel? But Dominic Thiem, Juan Martín del Potro, 2019, 2018. And then Ivan Lubicic won it in 2010. And then the final answer that I would accept would be Leighton Hewitt, who won it in 2002 and 2003. So, listeners, did you get more than Joel?
I was going to say, if Kim wasn't shaking her head at the start of the episode, she's definitely shaking her head now.
She probably is. But either way, that means that Kim has listened to us until the second half. So that's something, right?
Right. Let's move on to our talking point for the second half. We're going to be talking about the WTA maternity pay, because they have introduced paid maternity leave for players funded by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund. So I think this is going to be open to around, they've said 320 players are going to be entitled to the same undisclosed fee, irrespective of their world ranking. And and the players won't have to give back any of that money if they don't continue with professional tennis afterwards. There's also going to be grants handed out for fertility treatment, such as egg freezing and IVF. And the program will include 2 months of paid leave for those who become a parent through partner pregnancy, surrogacy, or adoption. So quite a lot of things being covered here. And if to be eligible for it, players need to have competed in a minimum of 8 WTA tournaments in the previous 12 months or 24 over the previous 36 months. Yeah, Chris, what do you make of this? I think let's get into the Saudi aspect of it in a sec, because I think that's quite interesting. But just in terms of like this policy, first of all, what do you make of this? Because it feels like it's quite extensive in terms of what is coming in.
Yeah, I think what's really nice about it is that, Azarenka was talking about having had this experience herself, that there wasn't a program like that existed. I think even the nature of like how you were able to come back at times you wouldn't have a ranking, that was something that was changed, because maternity leave isn't necessarily the set period of time that it would be with an injury, or was treated in a similar way, and it just didn't feel right. So some changes have happened in that areas previously. I think in terms of there being a maternity policy for a lot of players who are more low down in the rankings, I think this is particularly beneficial to them. This will cover, I believe, around the top sort of 320 players, players who have played the 8 WTA events, as you've said. So that is something to be celebrated. There is something in place here, because for a lot of those people who are below that ranking, if you do want to have a child, you obviously don't know if you will physically want to come back to the tour. So I do like the fact that you don't have to return any of it. You have that maternity pay, and even if you never compete again, that is something that you are able to have. So I imagine a lot of people at the end of their career would also look at doing this, but it does give you the option, if you aren't going to be playing, that you do have some money coming in afterwards. So that's very nice. That's the positive side of things. I do think that tennis players are quite highly paid generally. So I think that when it comes to some of these things, it would be a bit odd if a world number one was claiming, the IVF treatment or some things around the fertility treatment. I think that's probably when, if the budget is unlimited from the backer, you could put a lot of these things in. A lot of people globally do not have access to this, and tennis players are already in a very privileged position. So that's one where I think the question mark is more out. But the biggest thing for me is it's just such a shame where this has come from. It's almost
surprising. Like,
I think it's
very progressive, actually, for a
do you think encouraging women to take maternity leave?
I just mean in terms of where this is, for me, has kind of come from, and it's almost like needed, I don't know, Saudi Arabia's involvement in order to kind of.
They need an unlimited pot of money. And also, if Saudi Arabia wants to get more involved into tennis through the Public Investment Fund, this is the perfect opportunity to say, look at all the good that is being done.
Yes.
And all the good that's being done for women on the WTA Tour by Saudi Arabia. I do think that is.
Do you think that's a worry? Do you think, like, it's like they're not doing this just out of the graciousness of their heart? They are gonna be looking for something. I don't know what it is, but they're going to be looking for something.
Well, they've probably been promised something
in the future.
Think. I think we're on that sliding scale to the whole tours, both tours being owned by them. And I think the question mark was much more present for the WTA Tour's involvement with them, given their appalling track record when it comes to women's rights and human rights generally in that country. So I do think that is a big caveat with this, is that it is a shame that this is something that you can't necessarily just celebrate, because nothing is changing inside Saudi Arabia. This is very much a case that if they do this, it will help change the way that they are presented, because they're doing something positive for women. But having said that, the idea of the Public Investment Fund encouraging players to have children and take a more traditional role, I also feel like is a weird one. And it's celebrated, it's not celebrated. I think it's a shame that it took the financial backing of the Public Investment Fund, and this wasn't something that could have been achieved beforehand. But at the same time, it's connected to a bigger piece that I do think is important, especially for players who are lower down the rankings, that there is a maternity situation at work. And I do think that this is a very exhaustive scheme that does cover a lot of different things and will keep a lot of people happy. But I don't think it absconds Saudi Arabia of any of the question marks that still exist or did exist when they became involved in women's tennis.
Yes, and we'll have to wait and see. I mean, what next for the public investment fund? Because it was on the ATP.
What else can they buy?
ATP rankings,
Yeah.
WTA Mat policy. Yeah, what is
Why can't they buy the US Open mixed doubles? Maybe.
Yes, yeah, but they need to put their money in sorting out the mess that is mixed doubles at Grand Slams. But maybe that's on their agenda. Who knows? Who knows? But right, let's look forward to the beginning of the round of 16 at Indian Wells, because we do have the order of play for the first day of matches for the round of 16. So on Stadium 1, we've got Mukova versus Swiatek, Rune Tsitsipas, Marcus Giron versus Arthur Fils. I'm a little bit surprised that's on Stadium 1, not going to lie. Tommy Paul, Daniil Medvedev, and then Zheng versus Kostuk. And then on Stadium 2, we have Griekspoor, Watanuki, Svitolina Pegula. And to me, surprisingly, Rybakina Andreeva. To me, that's almost one of the picks of both of the both on the men and women's matchups. But yeah, what do you make of those singles matches that we've got to look forward to coming up today on Tuesday?
I think Rybakina Andreeva, I'd like to see a repeat of that. That was a great match in Dubai.
Andreeva's still on an incredible win streak as well in 1000s because of her title in Dubai.
Yeah, she's really getting some great results in. I think I would be interested to see what happens in the Tsitsipas Rune match. I think I can see both of them coming away with the win there, and I'd like Tsitsipas to cement his status as back at the top. I think he's one of the few people at the moment who is taking the opportunity that some of the top players not playing their best matches will bring to him, but we can't not tune in for a Mukova Swiatek clash after that French Open final.
Do you see any potential upset, or do you think Swiatek, given her record here, given the way she's been playing, will have too much for Mukova?
I also think Mukova, there's some injury question marks too there as well, so I think it will be a tall order. But either way, I mean, it's a great set of matches. I think Tommy Paul Medvedev will be great. I'm going to stick with my prediction. That's probably the one, Joel, that will divide us and who does best in the predictions, because you have Paul to win. I've got Medvedev for the final. So that's a grudge match.
And, we do have mixed doubles out here as well. And this, Chris, you're going to have to tell me, is this a Paris new initiative?
No, it's not. That was purely because maybe this could be something that we could also celebrate, that mixed doubles isn't completely gone after the US Open. It's very much something they've kind of always done in the desert, where they do have a mixed doubles competition. There are some fun teams in there as well, and the draw is headed up by last year's US Open winners, Sara Errani and Vavasori. But it did just make a little nod to the fact that previously we had done a tweet and we had talked about it, the fact that the mixed doubles at the French Open will be fully open to anyone who has a ticket on that Thursday. So really encouraging people to watch mixed doubles. And the fact that mixed doubles is also being played not only in tiebreak 10s, which Rybakina and Fritz won, but also in a mixed doubles tournament. I do think it's nice to know that although one tournament is going one direction with it, it is still very much present and central to the program for a lot of other tournaments.
Yeah, it looks like mixed doubles is like the most, when things are converging together, mixed doubles is actually just diverging, and everyone is sort of just doing their own thing.
Maybe we all love it again, because I mean, I've always loved it. We've got Kasper's playing in an all Norwegian pair. Andre Rublev's even making an appearance, so they stuck around in the desert, I guess, for hitting practice. It's
got some of these partnerships give Hopman Cup vibes, if I'm not going to lie, actually. But
bit of a scratch pairing.
Yeah, a bit of a scratch pairing. But yeah, we'll look forward to that in the second week and all of the action to come from Indian Wells. But that wraps up our latest catch up here at Tennis Weekly HQ. We hope you've enjoyed the ride with us as always. Remember to subscribe to us so you don't miss a moment of ATP and WTA action. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all your favorite podcasting platforms out there. And if you love what you're hearing, then be sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube as well.
And you can stay connected to us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok and X, and also Threads as well. So do make sure you follow us on that platform, as well as all those other ones. We do post clips regularly, and you're able to watch us obviously on video on YouTube. And if you'd like to submit something to our mailbag for a post Indian Wells mailbag, you could ask us anything. You could just drop us an email, tennisweeklypod@gmail.com, or visit our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we'll be back next Monday for our full Indian Wells catch-up and Miami Open preview episode brought to you by Sports Travel and Hospitality Group. But until then, it's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Tennis Weekly.